Hey there, and welcome to another episode of No Bad Ideas, the podcast from the Revs Agency, a full-service marketing agency located right here in downtown Buffalo, New York. I am your host, Mitch Mursky, and on this episode, we are very excited to have a special treat, a guest on the podcast in the way of David Berkowitz. David is the head of marketing at Storyhunter, which is a video production marketplace where he runs all branding, product marketing, and demand generation. Previously to that, he served as chief strategy officer at the social listening technology firm Sysomos. And prior to that, David has held senior level strategic roles at some of the largest digital agencies in the world, namely MRY and 360i. 360i is actually where I got to know David. I was the client at Fisher-Price, and 360i was our agency. So David and I definitely have a history, probably going back about almost 10 years or so, I would say at this point. And if you want to hear more from David, I would definitely recommend subscribing to his newsletter, Serial Marketer. You can find that at serialmarketer.net, serial, S-E-R-I-A-L, serialmarketer.net. David, so great to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us on No Bad Ideas.
Great, thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Mitch.
So, David, I was hoping that maybe we could talk a bit about, with your background in sort of keeping your finger on the pulse of what's emerging in terms of technology and how that relates to marketing. If you can maybe just take us through some of the bigger moving pieces you see from a technology standpoint, that how technology and marketing are intersecting, and how some of those are applicable for B2B, B2C companies.
Yeah, and there's always a challenge. Every year or every stretch, there's some new challenges that technology brings. But I think one of the biggest right now is that we're in this evolution of so many areas at the same time, and it's really hard to keep focus. It's really hard to go and try to keep doing a couple things really well when there's always something new coming around. And it isn't just with the platforms. It's like I'm right now very deep in the video space of this video production marketplace, and the kinds of video that are hot right now. You have the 10-second disappearing video ads. You have live streaming. You have 360-degree video. You have video going into AR. You have AR and VR, augmented reality, virtual reality. So you have all of these different areas at once. You can have drone-created video or new kinds of other devices on the market. And then video keeps popping up, like anywhere where video hasn't been, like LinkedIn. All of a sudden, it becomes a video streaming platform, mm-hmm. and so it's really dizzying, and so just trying to get a handle on one or two things that work for you and work for your brand and your organization is a struggle. It's just like trying to shut out so much of the noise can be one's biggest challenge today. Right.
And I think what we talk about with our clients is, look, we're not just chasing the shiny thing for you. We definitely want to make sure that whatever we recommend for you fits within, your organization. Just because it's the new thing doesn't mean it's always the best thing. But I can see that. Do you see? I know that you attend things like CES and South by Southwest and a lot of these emerging technology conferences. Do you see that content seems to drive technology, or do you think it's the devices, or is it a mixture of both? Do you see that? Which one is sort of the driver of these things?
Well, there is a bit of this chicken and egg. Like we wouldn't have mobile video to the extent we have it until the iPhone came along and made all that possible. And now the software was important too, because you had YouTube launch just before the first iPhone came around, and so the two of those kind of grew up together, and they tremendously helped each other out, and it's very possible that YouTube would have been much more of a lean back television. If you remember, the first big hit that went around on YouTube, especially in like the media brand world.
Which I'm drawing a blank. You're going to set me up. So what is it?
So Saturday Night Live sketch, Dick in a Box.
Oh.
Right? like this sketch helped launch YouTube, and it's funny because it came from a big media company, and it was like, oh, well, it's the Lazy Sunday video, actually, sorry, that led to that follow-up hit.
Yes, right.
So Lazy Sunday, still have the grassroots feel. You have these SNL stars doing it, and then and then NBC kind of doubled down on it and helped YouTube get acquired, and there's some of this "the rest is history" piece of it. But but without the mobile device coming up there and like having that right technology, then it could have been much more of a lean back, desktop or set-top box platform, and we would be treating video very differently and not this lean forward like anyone can create it. So some of this right now, where I think Oculus Go could be a revolutionary device, but so there's Facebook's portable VR viewer. You don't need a cable for it. You don't even need to plug your handset in. It doesn't matter what kind of smartphone you have. It just it's really easy to set up and get going. Price point is $200, so it's like a great entry point. And especially for a high quality product, which it is. But on the flip side, the content really isn't there, and it's like I'm looking around and I'm trying to find things like what's a version of, say, Ready Player One, where you can have some mind blowing thing that's designed from the ground up for VR, and I'm stuck playing fishing games that coincidentally I was playing on the iPhone in 2007.
Right. That's a good point. Since we're talking about video, I think maybe I would love to hear a bit more about what Storyhunter is all about, and maybe give us some background on the video production space.
Yeah, well, so Storyhunter is a platform with 20,000 video producers and production companies all over the world producing work for media companies like CNN's Great Big Story and AJ Plus, and some incredible nonprofits like Change.org, and as well as a bunch of brands and agencies. And so it's just made it very easy to go and find talent, create any kinds of commercial or news-driven video, and get this done in a really quick, seamless way, and build up your team, and it's fun because we have with people working anywhere and everywhere. We have one nonprofit that likes to use us in places like Kenya and Bangladesh, but we have plenty of folks who also are able to access talent that's like down the block from them, and so even if you look places like Rochester, Buffalo, and Binghamton, where my alma mater is, where you might have a lot of great creative talent and people who went through the universities there, or the homegrown folks and born and raised, but just don't have as much of that marketplace or the connections to the New York, LA, London media companies or brands. And now you're able to connect the two in this much more seamless way, and there's that democratization element, which makes it really fun.
Cool. So how is this different than your previous experiences? I presume this is, I guess you'd typify Storyhunter as still a startup, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a startup. Look, we've been around since 2012. We just had our 6-year anniversary, but it still feels like, as much as the products evolved quite a bit, the company's still early. This is fewer than 25 people. It's the smallest company I've worked at since I got out of college. And so, yeah, and just like this kind of thing where everyone is doing some of everything, and, no job too small kind of thing. It's it's fun. And in a way, there are times where I feel like all this marketing that I've been talking about for the past 10, 20 years, now I'm actually doing it. And you really have to just live and die by what actually works, and can't just go and say something on a podcast and then walk away.
Right. So I guess speaking of of content, what are some of the use cases you would see out there for utilizing something like a VR or an AR in more of a practical sense?
Well, I think there are a lot of great B2B examples. Striver Labs is an interesting company in the virtual reality space where they're all about training professional sports athletes, and so they've worked with the NFL and others, and so brought this immersive video in where you can really see what's happening as if you're on the field, and you can queue up any and every scenario that you could possibly create, and now bring someone to it wherever they are. So things like that can extend far beyond, say, where the NFL is. Like I think real estate is just one of those industries that might lag a bit on tech adoption, but is still, like, if they're really good at trying to figure out how to sell their products. And so once you can start, and it helps when you have a very high price point product with higher commissions, especially in some of the bigger markets out there, then starting to use this to bring people inside the property. And it's like, if for anyone who's ever been house hunting, if you could do the first day of that just in a half hour at home and flipping through this stuff almost as easily as you can just looking at those one sheets, and now you can kind of go through it in advance of actually being there, you could save yourself a ton of time, and you may well just fall in love with something much sooner, and it can help close that deal that might not have closed otherwise. So I think there are a lot of purposes like that for sales, for training, and there's this empathy factor too, where there was a great example that we could covered a little while back from Charity Water. And so they had a fundraising event, and at the fundraising event, they had a handful of these VR headsets and showed people what it was like to go and build these wells, and what it was like for people to go and try to get water there. And so it's like one thing, if you're saying someone has to walk 2 hours to get clean water, but then you can show what some of that journey looks like.
Oh, yeah.
And they said that donation totals skyrocketed.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And they're like, the costs don't have to be that high. Like now that you could, the kinds of people you can find just with a decent 360-degree video camera and acquiring a few of these devices that the headsets now cost a few $100. Like some of this stuff that when you first read about it a couple of years ago, and you think of like these huge rigs you need to go and create and view this stuff, that element has really evolved really quickly. And so I think in many ways the B2B businesses and marketers are actually going to find more useful applications of it than someone who's like, trying to sell some $5 or $20 product, and there isn't that experiential need.
Interesting. Okay, so that's an example, or those some examples of technology, or it augments, the existing sort of processes. What about? This is something that I personally am sort of obsessed with. I think maybe because I've got a daughter going into college, and we're spending a lot of money on going to go to college, and would love to have her contribute to society in some sort of positive manner when she gets out of college. And some of the things that I'm reading about just how technology is disrupting the workforce is, that the robots are going to take over, and where you might think is a safe job, and we're not just talking about self-driving cars anymore replacing cab drivers or people or Lyft drivers. We're talking about white collar jobs as well. Do you have any sort of opinion on the impact on the workforce in the future, and where you see technology going? That's going to do you subscribe to the doom and gloom more side of it, or do you see that it's going to be an opportunity to create even more opportunities for people?
It's tough because it's I read a lot of both sides of it, and you look at, say, the Industrial Revolution and that shift away from farming, and new industries were created that totally obliterated anything that came before, and actually became a major growth engine and helped help sustain a much larger population than ever before. So there are some of these opportunities for greater productivity and people shifting into some of these new sectors. But I think that there's going to be a really messy state for a while, and I don't know how we avoid this because you think of I mean with truck driving being one of the largest industries in terms of number of employees in like practically every state. You think areas like fast food restaurants, and every single major chain, they're working on the automated pizza creator and burger flipper, and you go into McDonald's and they're trying to train you to not need the trainers anymore and just doing everything from a machine. And so how does this not displace so many people in that service world? And I know someone who's working on robots that give massages, right? Like I think there are going to be so many of these areas that are touched by it. And while we might need some of it in areas like elder care in Japan is brought up quite a bit, and areas where people aren't there aren't enough of those people in those professions, and in fields like nursing, where the number of nurses we need in this country and people training to be a nurse, like there's a big discrepancy, and so maybe technology can help fill some of that gap. But I feel like we're going to have some sort of messy middle in whatever we wind up calling this kind of revolution, 100 years from now.
Yeah. I feel like we're woefully unprepared for what's coming. So anyway, so I think one of the other things that it's close to our hearts is, we still have a lot of clients that are asking for guidance on social media strategy, which we do a lot of. And these days, it's always, in my mind, for the last 5 years or so, it's really been a combination of, paid, earned, and owned. You definitely have to support whatever you're doing from an organic standpoint with a level of pay. But I guess that as things emerge, it seems like organic is really kind of going away, and now it's more of a paid platform. It's really just a true media platform. Are you seeing any emerging platforms out there that are sort of gaining traction, or maybe even just the existing ones that you find are a sweet spot from a marketing standpoint?
Yeah, it's less about emerging platforms right now, and I think now we're at this point in terms of the major platforms and how they're jockeying and trying to position themselves. At one point, I had my own light bulb moment with Instagram Stories, and now I pay more attention to Instagram Stories than I do my Instagram feed, and in the process, it's fascinating seeing, like in my own feed, brands like McDonald's and Starbucks and some more boutique brands, like I'm a big fan of Allbirds shoes, and so their stuff always comes up, and Ben and Jerry's, and I definitely see a number of clients I've worked on in the past who and start populating it. But there's a lot of great material there, and what's kind of fun is that marketers are getting used to being ephemeral and not posting these things that could live on forever. And so, as Twitter came up, the idea was like, look, like you post something now, it could be around 10 years from now. And now you post something and it won't be around a day from now. And so the whole strategy changes, but it also the one bright side of it is that while you can't totally screw up, because you'll still get your wrists slapped, you can at least have some freedom that you might not have had before, and you could try to do some things with user generated content, or just play around with stuff, that even test out things that are people really going to care and respond to this in the same way, and maybe even field test how it is to bring up some issues that your company cares about, or feature people who wouldn't normally get to be featured if you have to do a whole press release around it. Like now you can actually talk to someone in the warehouse or behind the scenes in some way and give them a voice and to really deepen that connection people have with your company. And so some of that which Snapchat gets a lot of credit for ushering in, even if they're not necessarily the ones who can sustain it for the long haul. That element of it, that you just go fire away and just as long as you don't screw up royally, hey, this is great. Give someone else the keys to the account for a day and see what happens. That there's some more exciting pieces of it, but I gotta say, I miss the organic side so much. I miss some of the weirdness that happened, when everything was going around about trying to clean out your Facebook apps, and I went through my Facebook feed and I discovered I've given permission to nearly 1,400 apps.
Oh my gosh.
And most of them I could actually tell you something about and actually had some fun using, even if just for a day or two.
Yeah.
So I miss some of this where it's like, let's just do anything, let's try anything, let's all the stuff that Cambridge Analytica has gotten into these massive international scandals over. Like, we were creating quizzes just like those for jeans companies, for big box retailers when I was on the agency. Like the quizzes that they were doing were the same ones that I was doing, and maybe making terrible recommendations to clients that they should do. Now, granted, the clients were not going and compromising data, and they were trying to influence global elections. But
it's a big caveat there. Yeah.
big caveat. In case any past clients are listening, then I know you're not doing that. But the consumer facing version of it was insane. I was actually so surprised that the app that was at the center of the Cambridge Analytica thing, I'm blanking on what it was, but it was the only Facebook app I hadn't used. How was that possible?
Right. You were the target audience, I guess. Yeah. That just reminds me of one of my first memories in terms of interacting with a brand on Facebook in terms of an app was actually Oreo, which it predated. I know that Oreo was a client of yours at 360i, and we used 360i at Fisher Price when I was there. But this even predated that, I believe, because it was they were just getting started with Facebook pages, and Oreo put out a promotion that if you liked their page, you got a free package of cookies. I actually got I got to choose. It was a free package of golden or double stuffed Oreos. It was the most amazing thing, that, how much is a follower worth to you? Back in the organic days, the followers are for obviously the thing, right? So it was whatever you needed to do to get that follower. And for Oreo, it was a package of cookies. And it was incredible back. Those are the heyday. That was the heyday of organic.
The distribution involved with that, all the logistics. But granted, you weren't dealing with the tens of millions of people you are now. So.
Yeah, true. True. I could do that.
I was working on H&R Block, and when 360i got them on Twitter, and when they hit 500 followers, they were jumping for joy. Right?
Yeah. Well, David, I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much for being on No Bad Ideas, and hopefully you'll take a listen to this when it comes out.
I absolutely will. Thank you so much, Mitch.
Okay, thanks, David. Take care.
Appreciate it, you too.
That'll do it for this episode of No Bad Ideas. Thanks so much for joining us. If you would, please go on to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. It really helps with people discovering the podcast. If it's something that you like, hopefully you'll share it with your friends. Take care.